Welcome to the Sports Talk Line Network, where we talk sports 24/7, 365. I'm your host, Stephen Vanover, and this is the NFC East Weekly. And we have a full panel tonight as we work around the room. We got Spinksy covering the Eagles. Welcome, Spinks. We have Tom McAllister from New York City, going to be covering his New York Giants. Thank you for being here, sir.
Thanks for having me, Van.
And of course, the man with no remorse, covering the team with no remorse, the Dallas Cowboys. Sir, welcome to the show.
The pleasure is yours, Van.
All right, and before we get started, everybody, hey, hit that subscribe button down below. Hit that notify bell. Be sure and retweet us, repost us on whichever social media platform you're doing. We really appreciate that. Thank you. And hey, this is the NFC East Report, and we're going to start off with a team that I think surprised a lot of people in week one of the NFL season. They had a new offensive line, and as Mr. McAllister pointed out in the green room, you're not facing a team that you really want to be testing your offensive line against in the Pittsburgh Steelers, are you?
No. So a lot of draft capital was spent on rebuilding the New York Giants offensive line this offseason. Also, with Nate Solder opting out of the 2020 NFL season, they had to put a first-round draft pick Andrew Thomas at left tackle when a lot of people thought they wanted him at right tackle. They had to put Cam Fleming at right tackle. They had a new center, and of course, they're going up against a franchise that's notorious for having elite pass rushers, you know, with Mean Joe Green, Kevin Green, Greg Lloyd, all these great players. And the Giants' offensive line on the run game, they got absolutely crushed. The one thing that I will give the Giants credit for was they actually made halftime adjustments. And their first drive coming out of the second half, they had an 18-play drive. And they're able to move the ball because they're able to spread out the Steelers. When the Giants tried to do a power formation against the Steelers, their first possession of the game, Pittsburgh fumbled the ball inside the 5-yard line. The Giants had to settle for a field goal because they could not physically overpower the Pittsburgh Steelers in those power formations. The Giants offense did a lot better when they were able to spread the field. It was just that one killer turnover that Daniel Jones made inside the 5-yard line after that big 18-play drive, where this was something where on that drive he had a big third down completion to Darius Slayton to get him out of the back of their end zone. They were moving the ball. Everyone's getting involved, but that one play, that one turnover killed the Giants' momentum. Now, Van, I know you want to jump in on this.
Well, I wanted to ask you the question, all right, because that came out on social media at the time, at the moment that you're talking about. That was his Eli Manning moment. And yes, he's got to be good enough to overcome that, right?
Well, Daniel Jones is more mobile than Eli Manning, which really isn't saying a lot. But it's still something that's extremely frustrating, where this is apparently the one trait you don't want Daniel Jones to inherit from Eli Manning. Is Eli throughout his career was, turning the ball over at critical times. And here's another example for it too. And it was also a bad decision too. When you look at that play, Jones is running out. There's 5 white jerseys. And, even though he tried to throw it, I don't know if he'd been better off taking a sack.
Yeah.
It wasn't a good decision to throw the ball there.
I think he'll learn from it. That's what I like. But I tell you, the moment in the game that I really liked was, people were saying, oh, too conservative, this, that. Then Garrett and Jones unleashed that beautiful play action, went right up the seams. Was it 30-something yards for the score? That was a beautiful thing to watch, wasn't it?
Yes, it was, especially since I owned Darius Slayton in 2 fantasy leagues. Because of his play, I won 2 games. So I'll definitely take that one. But, Darius Slayton was a bright spot for the Giants. He was, a 5th-round pick for Dave Gettleman. He's become Daniel Jones' security blanket. And it looks like he has a bright future pairing up with Daniel Jones. And I also like how Dexter Lawrence played last night, too. He had a sack on Ben Roethlisberger. He had a big tackle on a screenplay for a tackle for a loss. It looks like the Giants had somewhat of a pass rush. It was just the big difference was the Steelers were 3 for 4 in the red zone scoring touchdowns. The Giants were 1 for 4, with that one being the last drive in the 4th quarter. So as long as the Giants are not converting touchdowns in the red zones and turning the ball over, they can't take that next step. But it looked like there was progress in certain scenarios.
From outside the red zone, they look deadly. But like you say, they're going to have to find that game, their red zone game, and it's not the air that. But, man, I agree with you. Slayton, he's the bomb. But let's go from a team in the NFC East that, for Giants fans, you didn't win, but I'm not all bummed out about that game if I'm a Giants fan. Are you?
No, and I think this is an expectation when you always have Eli Manning as your starting quarterback. They're like, well, maybe we just are good enough to get in the playoffs, to get one final Super Bowl run. Now they're kind of like, this is Daniel Jones. We're a young team. So you can live with the young team making mistakes, not a veteran team making mistakes.
Well,
and there are some players that you can get excited about. Lorenzo Carter was another one who had a solid game at linebacker.
Well, now, from a team with a fan base that's really not disappointed at all and is anxious to see what can happen for the next week, let's move to a team that, the fan base is not happy at all. They are not excited about what's going on because they expected a win in week one. Nate, what happened, big dog?
Hey, let me tell you first and foremost, I bet on the Giants and Steelers, and it was a fantastic thing. The Steelers covered the spread, so one thing I will say is bring me my money when it comes to the New York Football Giants this last week. But let's tell you who didn't cover the spread. The Dallas freaking Cowboys, America's team. They took the entire country suffered a great loss yesterday on the Father's holy day, Sunday. And it was funny because if there was a team that lost a lot of starters, it was the Los Angeles Rams. I think they lost something like 7 starters on the defensive side of the ball. But Sean McVay really proved his worth this game because he was able to scheme open receivers. Guess who was the number one quarterback who had the lowest intended yards this week one? Jared Goff. He had 4.3 yards per attempt, which means if you have success with that, there was either A, poor tackling, you were able to scheme people open, or C, it was just great design. And that's exactly what it was. Dallas linebackers were completely flabbergasted and over pursuing to run the football, and then they'd get these guys over toward the sideline, and they'd just be racking up yards, and they really didn't have an answer for it. And they're lucky to only have given up 20 points considering the fact that they were dominated in the time of possessions. With that being said, if you were to play with all of this, if Mike McCarthy kicks the field goal to tie the game and Jalen Ramsey doesn't pull a LeBron James flopper at the end, we're talking about maybe a win. So no, it's not and I'll raise this point too. Both times Dak Prescott has started the season 0-1, the Cowboys have been in the playoffs. So boom shakalaka.
Well, Tom, you had something that you were, wanting to mention there, right?
Well, I guess my one question to Nate is how disappointing was the Cowboys pass rush? Because everyone was coming in, hyping them up to be this unstoppable monster, when it turned out Aaron Donald, who's a great defensive tackle, had his way against the Cowboys offensive line. I think that definitely impacted the game, where the Cowboys underperformed on the defensive line and the Rams overperformed. Actually,
it was quite the opposite because they couldn't even get to Jared Goff because of the over-pursuing by the linebacker. So I think it was actually the back seven. They were great scheming, getting the ball out of Jared Goff's hands right away. And you're right, Aaron Donald was absolutely unstoppable. What they did is they shaded him over Connor Williams, which is the weak link on the offensive line, and he had his way with them. I mean, he was an absolute game wrecker. And if you're looking forward to next week, a name most people don't know is Grady Jarrett for the Atlanta Falcons. They could probably copy the same game plan.
Well, what I'm curious about, actually, as I put in my article, was exactly what Tom alluded to. The basic game formula was one Aaron Donald was greater than Lawrence plus Smith plus Griffin. And I hear what you're saying about the back seven over pursuing, but that was on runs, dude. I mean, they weren't getting to Goff because Goff got the ball out of his hands quick. They ran a hell of a scheme. They designed for him to get the ball out fast, and then every once in a while he'd take a shot downfield on a play action and burn him for 25 to 35 yards. I think the Cowboys got out-coached because I think they had a scheme to deal with it, whereas on the other side, the only scheme he had is like, all right, he starts out, he knows he's going in with his second backup right tackle who he rushed back from injury. That guy only lasted, a quarter, well, not even a quarter, and then he's out. So they're working with a rookie at right tackle. He didn't really change up. He didn't move the pocket around. He didn't He didn't adjust anything. He just said, okay, we'll just tough through this. And Dak had pressure on him the whole game. They still were able to get stuff done, as you said. I thought it was amazing. But I was just really disappointed because what I'm asking you, man, is I thought that Garrett got replaced because he was terrible at making in-game adjustments. And what I saw here was no adjustment.
Well, yeah. Another thing I wanted to point out about the Cowboys' offense is they kept the same offensive coordinator in Kellen Moore, but they were changing the philosophy because Mike McCarthy comes from a West Coast offense philosophy, and I was shocked at the lack of the amount of times they attacked the middle of the field, and I saw a lot of stopping routes. And a principle in the offensive philosophy of the West Coast is attacking the middle of the field using not vertical routes, but attacking horizontally.
Right.
So you saw me right there crossing swords of sorts when I was trying to point that out. So, have your fun at that. But
yeah, it was interesting, and I thought injuries had a whole lot to do with it, especially on defense where they lost LVE, early in the game. And then, they had talent at linebacker, but that's a huge drop-off from LVE to a guy that they, bought in as a free agent, which is what they had. And so then Jalen Smith was out there, first time at weak side. So there was a lot going on back there with the guys. I thought the Cowboys looked good, but I think the problem here is they got out-coached. What do you think, before we go on to the Eagles, the last thing, here they were, it was 11:47 left in the game on 4th and 3 from the LA 11. Dallas is just down by 3 points. They've already stopped the Rams 3 times in a row. The defense is finally starting to get some pressure against Goff. He wasn't able to step up. They got some turnovers, and they're really rolling. And on 4th and 3 from the LA 11, he decides, instead of kicking the field goal, letting his defense get the ball back, he decides to go for it. He doesn't. And then LA has the whole playbook. They're ahead by 3. They don't have to hurry. And they take their time. They chunk 5 minutes off the clock, leaving Dallas with not much time. It turns out like it turns out. What do you think about that decision?
I thought it was an awful decision, but it's kind of funny that we killed Jason Garrett for being overly conservative.
Yeah.
Now here we are with this free-loving hippie go for it at all times, and all of a sudden it bitch slaps you in the face. So
yeah, okay, that's exactly what I thought too. Okay, yeah, Spinks.
I think it's hard. Cowboys fans always want to say it's someone's fault. It's the coach's fault. It's Dak's fault. It's the O-line. It's the injuries' fault. But I think all those things just came together at the wrong time on the same day. I don't think there was one incident that made it as so bad that we can't win next week. I think the Rams are the team at best. I think the coaching wasn't that good on the day. Injuries didn't help. Our tight ends out for the season. I just think that so many factors came together which made it hard to win. And he probably should have gone for it. He probably should have gone for the field goal then. But if he scores a touchdown, we're sitting here talking about something else. So I think it's just one of those sliding door moments. And Cowboys will be good. They'll come back. They'll go 15-1. You heard it here first. 15-1.
Okay, Spinksy, you got to check the little card, before you come on the show. You're the Eagles guy, and you said "we" 3 times when you're talking about.
I meant the Eagles, yes.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I got that. Just misspoke. Okay, and speaking of the Eagles, that's a team that everybody said, hey, this team is going to be vying for the #1 spot in the NFC East, and they definitely have the talent. They made upgrades across the board. What happened, man?
Right, well, I'm here to cover the Eagles, as I've currently said. They're my favorite team ever. My mum always told me, if I've got nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all.
Okay, so that's the Eagles report. Okay.
Right, look, the Eagles started the season fantastic. Zach Ertz scored after about 5 minutes. Dallas Goedert scored early in the second term. 17-0, and they had the world at their feet, and it looked like the Eagles of old. And then, stuff got really bad. And rushed the pass every single time. Carson Wentz got sacked 8 times in the game. I think 8.5 actually. Washington scored 27 unanswered unanswered points after that. Ended up being 27-17 game. Ben, I'm sure you're going to touch on them after.
Oh, yeah.
Carson Wentz ended up finishing the day 24 of 42 for 270 yards, which is not bad, but 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, and those 2 interceptions turned the game's head. Nate, how do you feel about Eagles going forward? Are they any good?
Oh, it was lovely to see, but I will give them the benefit of the doubt. I will have mercy on the souls of Philadelphia because they were absolutely obliterated on the offensive line, and particularly on the right side. They lost Brooks, probably one of the best right guards in the league that a lot of people haven't heard about, to an Achilles injury for the year, and they had Lane Johnson out at right tackle, arguably the best right tackle or up there in the league. So those guys weren't playing. So they had the deck stacked against them. But anytime you give up 8 sacks in the league, you're not going to expect to win. And what eventually happened is where they were sitting on the routes because they couldn't challenge them vertically and they didn't have the time to go do so. However,
they haven't got an out and out running back either. They're using Boston Scott, and Scott had 9 carries for 39 yards. I think at one stage Carson Wentz had more yards going forward than anyone else. And I think having so many guys come at you at once, I think throwing was his only option, and all his targets were virtually tight ends. I think Jalen Reagor's in there somewhere, but like that's it. They haven't got a lot of talent on offense. So, and having that line in front of him that just leaks guys through, it's hard. So, and like they're facing the Rams next week, and the Rams are going to do exactly what they did to the Cowboys the other day. I think the Eagles are in big trouble here. I know it's not a good start. Things could have gone either way with them, but it looks like they're going to have a tough couple of weeks.
Well, does anybody know what happened to Miles Sanders? I mean, he was breaking out this game.
And then
not his hamstring.
Nothing at all.
So I mean, you know, he's down, and then Carson Wentz again. You know, there's no denying he's got a big arm. He can move, and when he's feeling it, there's a lot he can do. But you talk about having some Eli Manning in you. Eli Manning was good for 1 a game. You know, Wentz is good for 2. Does anybody disagree with that?
They kept the wrong quarterback. They should have kept Nick Foles. I've been saying it for years. Listen to me, God's sake.
So, all right. Well, anyhow, let's do this and segue into the flip side of that game. The Washington NFL football team, and that's the guys I'm covering right now. That means I am covering the NFC East champs. And before we get started, there's 2 things I want to mention that are eminently important in order. First of all, if you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe button down below and that little notify bell. Please give us a retweet or a repost on whatever social media platform you're doing. And next, a show of hands, please. Who here saw the Washington team at the top of the NFC East at the end of week 1? Raise your hand. And stand up with a real yeah, exactly. Not a freaking one of us. You know, exactly. Not nobody. Okay. But what I did write about in the preview, and what really came through bigger than I had ever hoped, was basically the Washington pass rush. I talked about the team, and I said, look, you know, the 49ers, and actually it was Denver that really started this. We want 3 superior pass rushers, and with 3 superior pass rushers, we're going to change the game. And they did. And so the 49ers saw that, and boy, did they work it. All right? I mean, you know, that 49ers defense with those 3 rushers, that was incredible last season, wasn't it? And now here you have not 3, all right, but 4, and possibly, you know, a few guys. You have veteran Ryan Kerrigan with 2 sacks. Sophomore, Montez Sweat. Remember him that just fell to the Washington and they got him? He got 2. Rookie Chase Young got 1.5. I also saw him split a double team and chase a rundown several times. This guy was all over the field. He's incredible. They have a veteran Ioannidis, okay, which, you know, I think he used to be a Greek and stood there in Thermopolis, okay. Then they got veteran John Bostic. He got a sack. Veteran Jonathan Allen, you know, from nose tackle, he got a half a sack. I mean, this is what happened. This is incredible. Carson Wentz, 42 for 24, 57%, 270 yards, 2 touchdowns, and what does Spinks say? 2 interceptions. Also, the Eagles' rushing attack, altogether, 17 attempts, 57 yards, 3.4 average. That's not going to win you a game in the NFL, all right? However, if you can hold teams to that, if you can do what this Washington defense did, that will win you a lot of games in the NFC East. Eagles 17, Washington 27. Get the fuck out of the way. Who's got a comment?
Well, first and foremost, you made the mistake of saying subscribe right before you gave that disgusting advertising of a football team. I mean, that's been toxic culture for I don't know how many years, but please stay, Dan Snyder. You are a saving grace to the Dallas football team. Speaking of which, but good God, I don't know where to start. I'd rather watch Tom twerk than go watch that highlight that Lotto's going to put out. But at the end of the day, yeah, it goes all the way back.
Hold on, I can't get that visual out of my head, man. No, stop. Okay.
But anyway,
nobody can. Everybody's just like, no, okay, just.
I think the Washington football team they're gonna have a huge impact defensively on everyone this year. Unfortunately for everyone else in this division, we have to play them twice. And so I think even the Cowboys O-line, which are fairly strong and solid, are going to find it hard to defend against these guys coming at them. I think Dak's going to get hurt game after game. I think Daniel Jones is worse. That guy's going to get murdered. But everyone else is in trouble too. I think the Redskins need to obviously Haskins needs to be able to score more touchdowns through the air. But defensively, they're awesome. They're great.
Yeah, Tom.
Now you kind of mentioned, I totally agree that the Washington defensive front had a monstrous game. But now the question comes in, could Dwayne Haskins be a quarterback like Joe Flacco and Trent Dilfer and win a Super Bowl on the back of a phenomenal defense? Now that's something because, if you build up an elite level of your team, you want it to be the pass rush. Because if you have an elite pass rush, that negates the running game, how great the receivers are, how great the quarterbacks are. If you're beating the quarterback like a piñata on Cinco de Mayo day, that negates everything. It looks like Washington has it. And also they're young. That's something else.
I mean,
they're young, man. They're talented.
Yeah. It certainly negated Carson Wentz. Okay, and we're going to find out because next week, they go up against the Arizona Cardinals, who went up against a very nasty 49ers defense, okay? But they're not the 49ers defense of a year or two ago. They just aren't, okay? They're missing some key pieces. And the 49ers front of Bosa, Solomon, Armstead, and D. Ford, I don't think they are nearly as good as the Washington front. And that may be saying a lot. Hell, it is saying a lot. I don't care. They are that good. I think that this is going to bode well. I think the Cardinals game is going to really show a lot about where the Washington offense is. And I agree with you, Tom, and with you, Spinksy. This team is going to go as far as their offense will carry them because this defense is going to be ready.
Yeah, I'm not even convinced that the defense is for real. I think in 10 weeks from now, we could be looking at this as one of the biggest upsets to happen in the entire year so far. Particularly how you saw how depleted Philly was on the offensive line.
Yeah.
But I will say this. I think Chase Young is for real because they were flipping him on both sides of that line.
They flipped him around, and he was doing the run well. You saw how he was doing against the run. I mean, the guy was unbelievable. And he gets down the line and chases down from the backside. I mean, that guy's for real. Look, we know Kerrigan's for real. There's no doubt. The guy has nothing to prove, and he's still at the top of his game. We know that Chase Young is for real, and we know that Sweat could be for real. But I'm telling you what, he flashed last season, and this season, if you're going to flash, start in game one. He did. So, all right. Well, guys, look, that's it. NFC East report. Thanks, everyone, for being here. Let's work around the room. Spinksy, CFB, they'll find you. And you also have a certain college football show going on, don't you?
Yeah, college football show, guys. Airing 3 p.m. Pacific time every Saturday. Nice and early over here on a Sunday. Get in touch with me. Find me on Twitter at SpinxyCFB. Send me a DM. Come on the show anytime. We're going to have SEC previews coming up soon.
All right. And Tom, I understand this isn't the only East show that you're going to be doing this season, right?
No, we got in the works. You can first off, you can find me on Twitter at defense_com. And in the works, you'll hopefully find us starting the Battle of the Big East, where we're going to focus on Big East basketball.
All right. I can hardly wait, man. All right, and of course, No Remorse Sports. You and I are going to be together a lot. We're going to be doing the Cowboys weekly, and then we're also, of course, you are going to be putting up some No Remorse Sports, which, I mean, tell me about that, man.
Well, when I grace your television screen, because you're going to have your YouTube to get in all this sexiness with my brute Viking strength and my swords in the background that shall remain crossed at all times. But I'm going to be talking MMA, football, and a little bit of hoop.
All right. What's amazing is that he saw that all in the same game, which, you know, only he can do, okay? And of course, you saw everybody. You can follow him on Twitter. You can find me on Twitter at Stephen Vanover. Follow Sports Talk Line, the #1 channel on sports in the world, at Sports Talk Line. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you next week. This show is going to be live from now on. We're going to be doing this every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the NFC East Report. We'll see you next week. Oh, guys, I thought it was great, man. What do you think?
Beautiful.